He gave me a hard time. He said, Nolan, you're going to go from intelligence to cleaning porta potties. And I said, yes, sir, I am.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trace of Burnout. I'm Dan,
I'm Roger.
and today we are joined by Marine Corps veteran and hot sauce entrepreneur, Mr. Cassidy Nolan. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. How are you?
Every day is an adventure.
The first day of fall. I mean, it doesn't feel like it here in North Carolina, but give it another month.
Absolutely. So, Cassidy, we'll get started with you the way we get started with most of our guests. Does your family have a history of service?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. On my father's side.
You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, yeah. So, my grandfather, like many in of that generation, was uh, a World War II veteran, and I believe he was a mechanic in the Army Air Force. No, Army Air Corps, excuse me.
Right.
To my knowledge, that's as far back as my lineage goes. So,
So, I mean, where were you? Where did you grow up? Where's your family generally hail from?
my mom is a naturalized citizen from Barranquilla, Colombia. She has papers before we call ICE, so no
Too
issue
late.
there. And unfortunately, I don't really know anything about that family lineage. And my father's side, so I've been told, is like a German English kind of mix, and they are all from, or at least my father and my grandmother were born in Bishop, California, which is like on the east side of California. Pretty desert, high desert country, really.
Okay. But your father did not serve?
No, no, he was a chef. No, he was a chef basically since he was like
Ooh.
16 or 17, and did a lot of skiing, did a lot of mountain biking. And then, in fact, actually, that's how my parents met. They met at a restaurant in Aspen, Colorado, I believe in like the late 70s or early 80s. And um, my mom is a massive Grateful Dead fan, for anybody who knows that
She's a
band.
deadhead.
Uh, and when I say deadhead, I think a lot of people don't use that term correctly, because a real deadhead is the quintessence of like this hippie movement where,
Uh,
um, to me, I feel like the music is questionable unless you're on some sort of psychedelic. And she was that person. She would wear like a flea collar to concerts. I mean, she followed him around. She's been to the only state she hasn't been to is Hawaii. Um, so that was that type of woman. It still is today. She still will see Dead and Company whenever they're touring. So they met at a restaurant in Aspen, Colorado. My mom got pregnant with my older sister, and they ended up, getting married. They moved to Mill Valley, which is like just on the north side of San Francisco, and ended up having four kids, me being this, the oldest son and the second born. So that's kind of grew up between Petaluma and Napa, California. They obviously, divorced pretty soon after, and split my time between the two places. But whenever somebody asks where you're from, I usually just say Napa.
So, how did you end up joining the service since there wasn't really a long lineage of it?
Yeah, you know what? Great question, because I feel like I feel, I feel like me joining the service is more or less kind of like on brand, for the Marine Corps, at least, for like, why did you join? I have a uh, an idea or a concept that I cannot prove right now. But for many of us in this position, like, why do you join? Maybe 10% of the military will join for some family lineage, right? This is what we've always done. Another percentage will join for a sense of patriotism or nationalism. I think you saw a lot of that post 9/11, like immediately after.
yes, we did.
Um, or kind of coming of age, like if you were in high school and September 11th happened, you had to wait a couple of years before you could join, right? But I joined in 2008, so September 11th happened when I was in sixth grade, and the war in Iraq was still pretty hot. of course, myself and a lot of others joined for that. But where I'm getting at with this is that I feel like a lot of service members, men and women, who are going to join the service usually comes from their like circumstance. I believe for a lot of us who join, it's usually a sense of like upward mobility that normally we would not be privy to prior.
Yep.
You come from broken homes, spousal abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, and the military offers a way out, a very quick, off ramp
Yeah.
exit to you don't have to live in this poor town or again, these circumstances that you've been born into. And the military will give you discipline. They'll give you a paycheck. They'll give you clothes, a place to live. You could travel. If you do really well, you could make it a career. Or if you want to get out in 4 years, you got your educational benefits for, again, the enlisted side. That is incredibly enticing. That's a very good recruitment tool for people such as myself in that circumstance. Did I join having all of that sort of understanding? Not necessarily. I think I saw the uniform, I saw this like discipline, and I saw this like prestige around joining the service. This honorable, disciplined. It just was incredibly appealing to me. And when I graduated high school, I was offered a position of a manager at this restaurant here in Napa. And at the time, I just enrolled at community college. And on the second day of community college, like I was in an algebra class, and I literally just the teacher started, and I was like, and we're like, just close my book, and I went right to a recruiter, and I joined. I knew I wanted to get out. I knew I wanted to do something greater than basically what I felt was the 13th grade at that point in time, and I was dating this girl whose father was a Marine veteran. He fought. He was a Vietnam veteran, excuse me, and a Purple Heart recipient. And I just felt this guy pulled himself up from the bootstraps, and he made a living. And um, if anything, he was kind of like a little bit of an inspiration of like I could, if he could do it, I could do it. And he's been incredibly supportive of me. And that's ultimately, I guess, if anything, it was an accumulation, right? A
Yeah.
sum of all parts.
Yeah.
It,
I would say, on your thesis there,
yes.
you are absolutely right. I can't put any specific numbers to it, but based on my own experience and based on the people that we have talked to on the show previously, there
Yeah.
are a good portion of people that do use the military to pull themselves up, and I think you're absolutely right there. But also, what I'm hearing you say is that the commercials got you. That's why you joined the
In some way,
Marines.
yes.
Was it the Marine who was fighting the lava monster over the volcano pit with the fire sword or whatever? I mean, come on.
I love that you remember that commercial. I believe that was for the officer. It was for the Marine Corps officer program. That was, OCS. Um, and it was a Marine that was fighting a dragon. And then at the end, he gets to, they have like a dress blues, but it's like black, right? It's a pretty cool uniform. But the one that got me, man, so good. Um, I actually almost never bring this up because it's deep down inside me. But it was a guy, this just chiseled Adonis of a man who's climbing up this mountain in this white skivvy shirt. He climbs up the mountain. At the end of it, it's this whole like montage of Marines before him and Iwo Jima and everything else. And then it kind of cuts to him in his dress blues, and it's like the few that proud the Marines. And I thought like that is the coolest thing I have ever seen for sure. So, and I was probably like in fourth grade, I was probably 9 years old. So yeah, those commercials. But in all fairness, the first recruiter I talked to was the Army.
Roger and I like to poke fun at our Marine brothers and sisters in arms, but we always give credit where it's due. Their commercials have been the best for my entire life. For my entire life.
They're so good. Yeah, they're so good.
So if you went to an Army recruiter first, Why didn't that work out?
How did we lose you?
They were at lunch. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. I am not
You're
kidding.
literally out to lunch. There you
They
go.
were out to
Great.
lunch.
It was
Their
it was the it was sergeant's time hours. That's what it was.
yeah. At the time, Napa only had like one recruiting station, and all it had was the Navy, the Army, and the Marine Corps. You had to drive like 35 minutes to go to the Air Force one. You had to go to another town over for the Air Force. So, Air Force is off the table at this point, right? And the Navy guy, I kid you not, was never there. I to this day, I never saw him. I don't think I've ever seen a Navy recruiter to go even further. And so it was really between the Army and the Marine Corps. And just that day, like I said, that day that I closed the books in that algebra class, I went to go talk to the Army because they always had all these incentives, right? And I'm not bashing the Army, but the Army always had this like plastered all throughout the that area was $40,000 for college. Again, you don't really understand the way that GI benefits work and everything, but you could drive a tank and do this and helicopter pilots, and they had all this swag. So that immediately I'm going to go over to the Army uh, recruiting office, but they were out to lunch, and the Marine staff sergeant, well, I won't say his name. I mean, I have nothing bad to say, but just for privacy, I won't say his name. Um, the staff sergeant was like, "Hey, they're out to lunch. Do you want to talk?" And I was like, "All right." And that was it. And he asked, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I saw this movie, and it has Ryan. Just to get super technical here, it was called Breach. Do you remember? Do you guys remember that movie Breach? It had Ryan Phillip in it. It came out in the early 2000s. It was basically at the time it was like the biggest spy leak the FBI had ever had, and the FBI like internally were they were able to put it together, and they'd be like, hey, it's and he passed away just recently. I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but I thought this whole concept of being a spy, like working for the FBI, the CIA, was like this super cool cloak and dagger kind of thing. And I kind of felt like I wanted at that time. I was like, this is something I'd like to do like down the road. So I wanted to do military intelligence. And he's like, yeah, we got that, And I was like, all right, cool. And I said, do you know what they do? And he's like, man, you're going to be like James Bond. And I said, really? And he's like, I honestly don't know, And I was like, oh, okay. So he said, but before we
Aston
go any
Martin
further,
tuxedos. So yeah, it's
yeah,
the exact same.
but in his defense, he did say, he's like, look, I don't really know what they do, but before we go any further, you're going to have to take the ASVAB. And if you take the ASVAB, that's going to be kind of like it's going to dictate whether you even can do it or not. And I scored 1 point higher than the bare minimum to do the job.
We call that meeting the standard.
Yeah. So I got lucky.
So how long after that did you ship out?
6 weeks.
Okay, that's pretty quick then. Nice.
Yeah. It was a pretty quick turnaround, and I played sports in high school. So physically I was there. I didn't have to put too much, like the whole debt program for me was like, oh, okay, you want us to run, okay, whatever, no problem. Pull-ups though, pull-ups are tough. Pull-ups are still tough to this day. Pull-ups were tough when I was in it. I was just one of those guys. Pull-ups are hard. um, so yeah, 6 weeks later, and I got for every Marine, the first thing is obviously boot camp. And if you're on the west side of the Mississippi, you go to camp or MCRD San Diego, and if you're on the east side, you go to Lejeune. And I was stoked to go stay here in California. Went down to San Diego. All things considered, had the time of my life. I mean, for sure it's an adjustment, but there was for sure moments of like, I have never experienced this in any form or capacity. Like I did Boy Scouts, and the only thing I'd ever shot at that time was like a 22. And now I get to shoot like an M16. Like this is sick. And when you had like field week and you're camping and everything else, you're like, man, this is exactly what I did as a child. Like, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to do. Um, and then from there, and then
Bivouac is like a campsite. So
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, bivouacking, yeah. Land
French fiction.
navigation, swim qual, time of my life. Again, like, hold on, you mean I get to jump off of this thing with a rubber rifle and a helmet and everything? Like, it was so much fun. Um, for sure there was other parts that were not fun. Like, did you guys, I
Unpleasant.
mean, like, the wagon wheel kind of thing was, you know, like 10-second showers were not as much fun. But um from there, then did what is it called? Like our combat training. Um
The Army calls it AIT. I forget what the Marine Corps calls it.
yeah, and the Marine Corps is split in two parts. You're either what we call like a pogue, which is a person. You're either a grunt, right, which is infantry, or you're a pogue, which is person other than grunt.
Everything else.
It's yeah, exactly. It really is that. It's literally like A B. But we all have to go to SOI, the School of Infantry, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank of what I had to do, but I do like this advanced kind of dumbed down version where if you were infantry, you'd be there for like 3 months, 3 to 6 months, depending on if you're a mortarman or a machine gunner or something. Um, for us, for the Pogues, it's like a 1 month condensed course. You get to shoot a rocket launcher, you get to shoot the machine guns, that kind of thing. It's super accelerated. And then from there, I went to Dam Neck, Virginia. I did Intel school.
I actually know where that is, but
Yeah, SEAL Team 6 is over there. Virginia Beach is over there.
I know Demnick
Uh,
pretty well.
yeah, it's a good time. It was, again, and I'm 19 years old. I just having the time of my life. And I'd never experienced the thunderstorms in Virginia before. Like in California, you just don't get that. The humidity over there on the East Coast, you
Yeah,
just don't get that over here.
yeah,
So all of that was, and this is again, if we were to say, why do people join the service? Moments like that, these experiences that you've never really been privy to. All of a sudden, it's like life is coming at you at like 1,000 miles per hour,
right.
and it is at the time, it is just, presumably you're enjoying it or there isn't some big drama going on in your life, it's a pretty good time.
So it was stacking up to be exactly what you wanted.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. No, just that. Yes. There was only one hiccup, and I'm glad we
Uh,
talked about this earlier. My mom is from Barranquilla, Colombia, naturalized citizen, and I want to do intelligence, which means I have to have a top secret
mhm.
clearance.
Yep.
When I was in boot camp, they're like, "Hey, recruit Nolan, front and center on the quarter deck," and I'm immediately thinking I'm in trouble. I did something wrong. I don't know. They're like, "Hey, stupid, you got to go over to this room over here." And this is the first time I'm by myself, and we're all programmed. You're all the military is very good at um, like a Stockholm syndrome thing, right?
Conditioning.
Conditioning. So I'm nervous, and this guy comes in, or excuse me, I walk into this room. This guy leads me into this room, and I go in this room, and it's this long table, and it's an Asian gentleman, and he has like a glassy eye, and he's like, "So you want to do intelligence?" I say, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This recruit does." And he says, "What do you know about the FARC?" I'm like, "I have no idea what that is." And he's like, "When's the last time you've been to Colombia?" I'm like, "Never been, dude." I'm not saying it like this, but I'm answering super loud, and you could tell that he's kind of like, ease off the brakes here, dude, right? And he's like, "When's the last time your mom's been to Colombia? When's the last time your dad's been to Colombia?" And my dad actually, ironically, my father traveled to Colombia in like 2004 to teach their chefs how to cook American cuisine. My father's a more or less accomplished chef. And it was a big thing for my father. It was a big thing in Napa. It was like in the news. Little known fact, you know what kind of cuisine they wanted to learn? Colombian chefs wanted to learn when they asked for what is American cuisine. Southern Creole food.
Oh no, nice.
Yeah, like
Okay.
gumbo and etouffee and that kind of thing. So he taught him how to make that.
Very cool.
Um, the skinny version is they flagged me for being some possible like spy, right? Or at least they were vetting me to make sure I wasn't one. And then when I went to Virginia, that came up again, and they like put me on like a secondary screening again, and it was a whole it was just an administrative kind of headache for a while, but everything obviously worked out. But it for sure scared me because I was afraid that if I didn't get my clearance, I'd have to, and no offense to anybody who did bulk fuel specialist, I thought I'd have to go be a bulk fuel specialist.
Did you ever bring that up with your parents?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. My sister ended up having to like bail me out. She had to get my mom's naturalization papers and we had to fax them over. And that was like in 2009 when faxing was still a thing. Yeah, yeah, it ended up really derail. I was like top of class at the time. And my instructor had told me, he's like, "Hey Nolan, if this doesn't get squared away by the end of the week, like we're gonna have to like we can't keep you here in this limbo period, and like we're gonna have to like reassign you." And it really got me scared, to be honest with you, because I really wanted to do that job. And again, the idea, the concept was like, I'm gonna work for the CIA one day. I'm gonna work for the FBI one day.
Plus, it made Thanksgiving really awkward when he saw his uncles in the FARC a few months later, and he had to.
um yeah, so it made, and I don't even want to know how things are today, you know. Um, but for sure, the military was they were and good on them, right? Good on them. So obviously everything worked out, but I had a great time except for that little hiccup, and still ended up graduating middle of the pack, and I was
Meeting
able
the
to pick
standard.
my work. Exactly. Yeah, that's if I had a family crest, it would be like this is the bar, and I'm like right here.
Good enough. It's
Good
like the old
enough.
expression. What do you call the in medical school? What do you call the one who finishes last in their class?
Doctor?
I believe this is true. It could be apocryphal, but I believe Patton finished last in his class at West Point, or at least close to it.
I think yeah, Custard as well. No,
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
Custard? He was
so that
like,
turned
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yes. Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Six one way,
Yeah.
half a dozen the other. um, from Virginia, I was able to get orders to First Marine Division Intel, what we call the White House, because it is a literal White House at Camp Pendleton on Main Side, and that's where I stayed until our deployments. And then I got augmented out with light armor reconnaissance unit. What was it? The first LER, and then by the end of my enlistment, I was the acting intelligence chief with Third Amphibious Assault Battalion, what we call YAS. I won't say the acronym for this podcast, and separated and went on to go to school and get my degree.
All right, we're not letting you off that easy.
Yeah, we're not going to let you off that easy. So when you went back out to Camp Pendleton, back out to California, was
Loved
that
it.
something that you wanted? I mean, because you
Oh,
were you were
100%.
enjoying bouncing around and going all over the place and having all these different experiences, and then they sent you right back out to California, where you were obviously very familiar with.
Now, admittedly,
Yeah,
Pendleton's pretty far from Napa, so
it is. Yeah, it's an 8 hour drive.
yeah.
But that's it. It is just an 8 hour drive. Again, life works in mysterious ways. There was two things that I really wanted to have happen. I wanted to go back to the West Coast because I didn't want to go to Lejeune. And Lejeune, if you talk to any Marines that are from there or have served there, and if they've ever served at Lejeune and then went to Pendleton or some other duty station like Okinawa, um, Lejeune is like a Marine's Marine. California is kind of known to be a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, it's Hollywood Marines. Yeah.
Exactly. I wear that proudly. I have no. It's one of those like no shame over here, none whatsoever. I loved it. It's like, have you been there? It's great. Why? I feel like anybody who knocks on it are people who are just jealous that they couldn't do it,
It's a
or
cope.
they could. Yeah, it's a cope. Yeah, exactly. You're just coping. You're saying, "Oh, that's a Hollywood Marine." Is that a bad thing? Are we getting paid the same? Are we doing the same job? But when my job is done, I could go to the beach and go surfing and then get some like super good tacos. And by the way, we have a 96. We have an extended weekend. Guess what? I could go drive up, north 8 hours to go see my family, say what's up, come down, and I don't need to take an extended leave. Right. That was great. That was awesome. So I really wanted to come back to the West Coast. I didn't want to go to Okinawa. I really didn't want to go to Lejeune. I thought maybe Hawaii would be fun if there was orders, but getting orders to Hawaii is like super rare. Um, there was orders to Hawaii as it turns out, but the way that your selection goes is how you ranked in class. And up until that incident, again, everything works out. Life works in mysterious ways. I was top of the class for a good portion of our training module. So I was on track to be able to pick first when orders duty stations came out. But after that incident with my mom's paperwork, I kind of took a back seat. So now I'm middle of the class when we graduate. So I get whatever's left after the first half picked, and everybody on the first half picked their duty stations, and a lot of the West Coast positions get picked up except for one. Oh, okay. And then the other thing too, I forgot to mention this, is I didn't want to be a winger, what we called a winger. I didn't want to do air intelligence, right? There's ground intelligence, there's air intelligence. Air intelligence to me was the most boring part of intelligence. It was basically like, what's the soil over there? Is there any like obstructions for our helicopters or for occasionally our fixed wing, which again, that's you don't have to worry about that, right? So then it became like, are there any like anti-air emplacements, right? And now Afghanistan, your anti-air, if you were lucky enough to find reports of like a Dishka, like a 51 cal or something, right?
It was made in
Traditionally,
the
it's gonna
1960s. Yeah.
yeah, like realistically, it's gonna be RPGs and RPKs, right, or PKMs. Which good luck trying to tell somebody like they're over here. If we know they're over here, we're gonna drop a bomb on them, right? Um, Ground intel I felt was just to me was you're really doing the job. You're talking to the grunts. You're going out there. You're looking at IED emplacements. You're looking for
Actionable
um,
intelligence.
yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Actionable intelligence, and that was what I really. So I wanted something on the West Coast, and I wanted ground intelligence. Everybody's picking air intel because I feel like it's the easier job to do. It's just a more boring job. Um, there was one West Coast position left, and it happened to be like ground intel, and that was First Marine Division. So it was division intelligence. I would have liked to have been with like a regiment or a battalion, like going further down in the like depth chart here. Because when you're division intelligence, you're getting reports from all your
Big,
battalions.
big, big picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super big picture. Small picture is you could see the fruits of your labor a lot faster, right? But I got big picture, and I don't know, for better for worse, I've always been looking at big picture since
How long was your initial enlistment?
5 years. Because, and I'm one of the very few, there's very few Marines that have 5 year enlistments. 5 years because your top secret clearance is active for 5 years and it's very expensive to get. Like an FBI investigator comes out and talks to your past employers, your ex girlfriends, your parents. Um,
Your
it's a good
uncle's in
time.
the FARC. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why they had an issue again. Good luck finding my mom's side of the family in Colombia.
Okay. So by the time you got to Camp Pendleton, how much time did you have left? Because I mean, this is after basic training and SOI and MI school.
Yeah. Um, 4 years, 6 months.
Oh, okay. So all that stuff really only took about 6 months to do. Okay.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less, maybe like like maybe 4 years, 4 months. Yeah, because
Okay.
Intel school was like 3 or 4 months long. Yeah,
Okay. So you show up at division headquarters as a private,
Lance Corporal.
or were you
Yeah,
a private first class by that point?
I ended up getting a meritorious promotion. I was an E3. I was a stellar Marine. But like I said, having the time of my life. I checked into my unit as an E3, a Lance Corporal, and all right, I have a story here. Um, and I'm sure you gentlemen have better ones, but here's mine. I checked in on a Friday afternoon, and that's the worst time to check in because I was coming from the East Coast and it was a late flight. But even then, by the time that I arrived, even with the 3 hours back and everything, I checked in on a Friday at like 4 o'clock and people are gone, right? It's Friday. People, more or less people kind of get released. I don't care. Again, Hollywood Marine people are checking out on a Friday at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like the company guns will be like, all right, you're good, get out of here, right? So I check in and there's nobody there to receive me. Um, Not the biggest issue, but kind of an issue when I have my sea bags and I'm in my alphas and I don't. There's no room for me, right? There's no. Uh, there's nobody from my unit there to help me check in or find me a temporary room or anything. So I have to check in to a sister company's barracks, and I sleep in what's called like a duty hut. It's basically, your guard watch or your fire watch person has
Right.
like this extra room. And so I'm sharing a room with a complete stranger. I have no idea who this guy is, and there's no lock on the door or anything. Um, totally get hazed the first night by this sister company. It was a truck company. Great time for a 19-year-old. And um, Saturday morning rolls around and I call all the guys that I just graduated with from Virginia that were checking, those that came out here to the West Coast with me, but they're in, they're separate units within Camp Pendleton. And I'm like, hey guys, I just checked in, what are we doing today, Saturday and Sunday? And my friend, um, again, just for privacy, I won't say his name, but my friend's like, hey, I got a car. I ended up driving from Virginia to California or he rented a car. I can't remember, but he had a car. And this other guy, he's from Bakersfield, and his girlfriend is in town. Like she drove down to come see him. They got a hotel room in Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard. We're like, okay, let's go. And she's like 22, right? So she's gonna get
Ooh.
alcohol. So there ends up being four guys, one girl, one hotel room, which is like the two twins, like two twin beds. So him and her have their own bed. And then there's the three of us guys on one bed over here. Very like the quintessence of Marine Corps kind of moment.
And college.
And yeah, it's exactly it. And we're all drinking alcohol, having a good time. My buddy who's from Texas, he's like, hey man, we're out of beer. There's a 7-Eleven down the street. I have a fake ID. And I'm like, hey, man, I don't know if this is a good idea. He's like, well, I'm going to go do it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go along too. We get alcohol using his fake ID. I get a Snickers because I'm panicking, right? We're all like underage. We're all drinking. I just checked into my unit and we're walking back to the hotel room with like a 30 rack. And he's like, hey, man, I'm going to crack one open. And I'm like, all right, dude, look, listen,
That's a bad idea.
I have to put my foot down. We can't be out here drinking on Sunset Boulevard. He's like, all right, let me have a smoke. So we sit down on the sidewalk and we're having a cigarette. And this guy comes up to us and we're like, uh-oh, and he's like, hey man, do you mind if I bum a smoke? We're like, oh, yeah, sure. And he's like, I just came back from Iraq. He was a Marine too, right? I just came back from Iraq. My friend's at a club. He's talking to a girl. I don't want to be here. I was like, all right. So we're all sitting there. It's like 1 in the morning, having a cigarette. and my buddy breaks open a beer. Now we're all three of us sitting on a sidewalk, drinking beer, having a cigarette with another Marine. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I haven't seen it. And then a cop rolls up. I was about to say a cop, right? Because there's all these cars and people passing us by. And a cop just rolls, stops right in front of us and puts the flashlight on all of us.
the bright light. Yeah.
Yeah. And the buddy that I checked in with, or the friend of mine from Texas, he starts kicking off his flip flops. And he's like, hey, Nolan, I'm going to run. I was like, do not. Whatever
That's
you do,
a
do
terrible
not run.
idea.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Should you have kept your flip flops on?
I've said too much.
That Marine friend of mine, or that Marine friend, and I cannot, I can't even, it was dark out. I can't even put a face to him right now. He gets up, he says, excuse me, sir, to the police officer. And he's like, I'm so sorry. We all just came back from Iraq. We're all Marines. We're at Pendleton. We're just going through some stuff right now. We lost a friend. The police officer takes the light off and he's like, is all that true? And we say, yes, sir. And he's like, do you guys need a ride back to Pendleton? And we're like, no, actually, our hotel is like right here. And he's like, then you better get to it. And he doesn't check our IDs, nothing. And we just
That's
go right
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I had my entire, like my entire career life flash before my eyes. I would have been, I was drunk in public, underage. Um, that would have been a really, really tough Monday morning when I would officially check into my unit.
I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I couldn't do that.
It's,
And
it seems to be the officer problem.
yeah, I love that South Park episode.
I thought this was America.
Yeah. Um, and then we ended up drinking until the sun came up, and that was my first day in the fleet. That was my first day checking in, and it was the first. I think it was the first of only two times I stayed out drinking the entire night. Like stayed out completely till the sun came up. Um, what a first! Yeah, and it's like if my kids did that today, I would be incredibly disappointed and upset with them, and I'd have some choice words. Um, but all I could say is I got very lucky, and that was that was my first experience for sure.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Precisely.
So that's your first day,
Yeah, that
or
was day
rather,
one.
that's like your day minus
Bonus
two.
day.
Yeah, not even
Yeah,
day zero, but Monday morning is your first day.
yeah. And it was like that was a crazy weekend. If this is what's in store, I'm gonna have a really good time. Um, honestly, like just to kind of fast track some things, but I ended up checking in on a Monday. I got a room, and they just said they're like, "What'd you do this weekend?" I was like, "Oh, I just hung out. Saw did some sightseeing. I'm from California, so like I know the area. I was totally lying. And I got my own room, and everything was kind of uneventful at the time. Maybe a month or two later, did excuse me, words start to come down, the what we call the Lance Corporal Underground, the rumblings of,
The mafia. Yeah.
yeah, there's going to be a deployment coming up. And I was I was only in the fleet for like 9 months by the time that I deployed the first time. So there was maybe like, 1 or 2 months of like a grace period where I checked in, where I was like, just meeting people, seeing things, doing things, getting the ropes. And then the tempo kind of shifted towards like, okay, we have to start doing inventory of items, and we need to start making sure everybody's qualified on the range, like all this preliminary stuff, because once you go overseas you really can't get that stuff done in a timely manner. So um
Where were you guys headed?
Helmand Province, Afghanistan.
This is '09, right?
We didn't deploy until March 10th of
You
2010.
showed up in '09, so you'd probably deployed in
Correct.
10. That sound about right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I checked in like August of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe July. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, maybe a couple months of a grace period, and then the tempo shifted to doing like workups, going to like 29 Palms, doing a whole bunch of like field exercises, doing combat lifesaver course, super fun. And that was kind of just this, the zeitgeist that existed. And it's like you could just feel the pressure in
Yeah.
every day at work, getting like I think we paid $100,000 for like a 3D model. I mean, it's the government, so $100,000 is nothing.
It's a
Um,
rounding
uh,
error.
Kind of like a sand table, but it was for Afghanistan and the Helmand province in particular. So everybody study that.
I mean, as a lance corporal, you probably wouldn't have had real access to this information. So this is a question, not a statement. I mean, how long in advance? Because just the nature of the Marine Corps, because it is a contingency force. Like, how long do you generally know in advance before deployment? Because I say that because in the Army, there's a much longer tail on
Really?
these deployment notifications for the most part. I mean, if you're on GRF Global Response Force like in the 82nd or 18th Airborne Corps, I mean, you're on call, so it could be moments notice. But if you're
Right.
in First Armor Division, like 12 months in advance if you're going on one of these deployments, and there's a whole training model behind all that. But I imagine the Marine Corps is probably a lot shorter.
Way shorter. I
Yeah.
mean, um, to put in perspective, when I came back in 2010 after an almost year-long deployment, which our unit was deployed for a year, I ended up getting sent home early for a unrelated. That's a story as well. I got sent home at like 10 months in 2 weeks. Um, I was only home for 11 months before I deployed again, I think.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Um, and when I got home, I didn't think I would deploy for at least 2 more years because the sort of like the standing order was every 1 month in is 2 months of rest, right?
So it's 1 to 2. Yeah.
Yeah. That was not the case for us.
Right. Same with
Yeah.
us.
Oh, yeah.
It
It
briefed
happens,
well.
right?
It briefed well.
Right. And then, some people, if again, intelligence is a highly sought after, you always want to have an intel marine with any unit. So there was a few people that I knew in my unit that, um, did a deployment for like one woman in particular. She did a year-long deployment to Iraq, was home for 2 months before they politely asked her to go out to Afghanistan for a year again, um, because she had to backfill for a position. And she did that, and then she was home for maybe 11 months, and then she was getting asked to do a year-long deployment again to Afghanistan.
The train up that you did before you deployed,
Yeah,
you had several months to do it. When you guys got on the ground in Helmand Province, do you think that that train up was um, do you think that that train up actually
adequate?
prepared you for how things were on the ground?
Absolutely not. And I don't say that with like a disrespect. I say that simply from a position of, look, I'm a father, right? I have kids. I read as many books for my first child as I possibly could about being a dad, right? And um, my father was a chef, but he wasn't around. Like I said, my parents got divorced when I was really young, and I really didn't have a father when I was growing up, and it was a tumultuous upbringing to say the least. So I wanted to like try and do right. I wanted to make sure I got this right, and I for sure, as every parent today, that's worth their weight in salt here. You know, I for sure made mistakes. It's like you could get ready as much as you can, but you're only ready enough. You're never going to be fully um, ready for this experience that you've never had before, right? Like we even got a dog before our first child of like, okay, what is it like taking care of another life, right? You know what I mean? If that makes sense, like we're beta testing having a child. Um, um, so to try and like parlay that back to the military workups, we went to 29 Palms, which is a desert, and that experience um, kind of gets you to some extent acclimated, maybe weather-wise, to a degree. But I would have to say, culturally, culturally, um, when you're doing a workup, you know this is a military base. I'm totally safe. It's fine. There's Americans outside the wire over here, right? Afghanistan, you know, the first time I saw an Afghan, really blew me away. And that's because it was an Asian looking Afghan,
It's
because of monk,
probably a
right?
Tajik. Yeah.
Tajik maybe, or this is what I was told. Correct me if I'm wrong. Genghis Khan, right? And they were treated as second class citizens, right? But it's like, hey, this isn't the pictures I saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um, but the climate, the sandstorms, if we got, and I mean, like the first time I, again, talk about a life experience, the first sandstorm I got into, it's like, if you saw that movie, The Mummy, the first one,
I remember.
with Brandon Fraser, and it's like, I always tell my kids whenever we watch the movie, I'm like, it looks exactly like that.
Yeah,
And you can't even
you
see
can
your hand in front of
you
your
can
foot.
you can see it coming
Yeah.
from
And there's,
miles
and there's
away.
nothing
It's
you
a
could do.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
wall.
Yes.
there's nothing
A
you can do.
literal wall. Yeah. And when it hits you, it is such an intense experience. But the the isolation, you know, um, the community, the brotherhood that you ultimately will build out of like survival in its own way
Yeah.
is something that just cannot be replicated when you're back in the States. For as many workups and stuff like that as you do, you're never really tested until you're in a combat zone, or until you're overseas. And not being able to, knowing in the back of your head, you're like, hey, my hours don't really stop when I like clock out today. Like I'm gonna go back to my 10. I'm gonna go back to my uh box or room or whatever it may be. And like, yeah, I could watch an episode of South Park or Family Guy or whatever it is you have on your laptop. And um maybe if there's internet connection, I could send an email or something. But I know I'm not going to be able to, again, like I'm not going to be able to go drive to the beach this weekend. And I know I'm not going to be able to like see my girlfriend or something like that. So that is that's a hard thing to truly replicate for an experience other than being deployed. And then to me, everything past that, even just again, the tempo, um, when we were on our work exercises or workups, I want to say it was like, I want to say we did like 12 on, 12 off, night, day shift, right? Obviously, everything is always 24 hours.
That's like banker's hours once you're deployed.
Yeah. You do these 12 on, 12 offs, but we only had to do it for like a week or two. And when you end up doing it for 10 months straight, this totally, totally different beast. The food, you know, the MREs, everything gets bland.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of, you know, um, working out with sandbags and um, like we got like and I'll be the first one to say, like, I don't have like, I know you guys call it what is it, an infantry badge, right? No. Um,
Combat Infantryman's badge.
Thank you. Yeah, your CIB.
Dan has one of those.
We have what's called a CAR, combat action ribbon, right?
Yeah.
Um, we got mortared and we got rocketed. None of those warrant CAR, right? You have to like return fire kind of thing. That's not necessarily true as long as you like if you're in what's called a tick, a troops in contact, right?
Yep.
Um, but I never got in a tick, right? So that part of that experience I never was subjected to. Anything other than that was like, I can't remember what that siren is called. When it like detects you know what I'm talking about? That thing?
It
Yes.
could be a couple different things.
Yeah. It's the incoming siren.
It could be the
Yeah,
LCMR. Yeah.
yeah, where it's like, incoming and it has like this super weird tone and everyone has to go to like those like concrete or a HESCO.
Yeah. I mean, the bunkers. Yeah.
Yeah, the bunkers. Like we went through that a couple of times, and the first time it was like, what was that? The second time you're like, man, I was just about to go to sleep. I was like right there.
It's funny you say that because there can be a time where if you go through that long enough, it becomes more of a nuisance than anything else. Like
Yes,
the
yeah,
first couple of times you're scared out
complacency.
of your mind, and then 9 months later you're like, ugh, here we
Yeah,
go again.
yeah, complacency. Complacency kills.
It
Yeah.
does indeed.
So it was, but how? All right, again, how can you possibly? I think for me, and this is a personal thing, I don't speak for all the Marines or all the Marine Corps or anything else like that. Um, how can you possibly replicate the internal battle that you have that goes on? Realistically, for most people, when you're deployed in those situations, you don't look, you know, you have a sense of optimism, of like, I'm going to make it to the end of the deployment. But realistically, you just take it every day. You take it one day at a time. You just say, I'm going to make it to the end of the day. That's it. And
Yeah.
I never had experienced that aspect to that degree until I was deployed. Not even boot camp. For sure, boot camp had moments of like, well, this is like when you're in a push-up position, you know, and the drill instructor holds you there for a really long time, or like a high stress position. The gas chamber, for instance, like this is the long. I can't remember how long we had to be in there, but like this is the longest minute of my life, right? I think we had to like take. We had to get you got to break the seals,
Yep.
and yeah, they tell you in advance, do not breathe in when you break the seal. First thing I did was take a big breath, right? Just
Rookie mistake.
immediately. Yeah, and I was
The
like,
former
I'm
drill sergeant,
100.
the drill
Yeah.
sergeant's laughing at you right now.
There's
Yeah. Oh,
always
yeah.
one. There's always
Yeah.
one.
And I was like, I'm 100% going to die right now. Like I could just, I feel it. Um, uh, but other than that, I mean, yeah, deployment was just, just let me get through this day. And it really, to me, and I think I still struggle with it, it's like that isolationism that just grows and festers. And you got your bros and you got your community and your network that you could rely on, but it's like when you lay down at night, it's just you and your thoughts. And those are hard. Sometimes those are really hard to deal with. Those are really hard. It's hard to make sense of things that you saw that day. It's hard to make sense of your position. Maybe you're dealing with like the for me, even at 20, of like, what exactly are we doing here? You know, what
Yeah.
exactly is being accomplished? Why am I all the way over? Why am I away from the comfort of a nice warm bed? Over here, and again, like some days you're like, I don't know what, I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why I'm here, and you just feel, you got to wrestle with that.
Yeah, you were certainly not the only person that's ever gone through that, regardless of service. And at that point, we had been in two different conflicts for 9 years, or well,
Seven, seven, seven
7 years,
plus.
7 years
Yeah.
for 2010. Yeah, your leadership members of your leadership had surely deployed at least once, if not multiple times. Is that is that something that they were cognizant of? Is taking time to check on their Marines and see how they were doing, not just like physically, but then also mentally, and making sure that they weren't pushed too far.
I experienced that when I was down at a um, battalion level, when I was at a company. You had a more singular unit where there was only, one sergeant or one um, there was a lot less of that middle ground. There was a lot less of that fat, right? The mid-level managers. When I was at division, and a good portion of my deployment, I was at Camp Leatherneck. Again, hate me, I don't care. Um, where there was better amenities. Um, we had a tremendous amount of like um senior leaders. So because it's like there was like this, it almost worked. Um, it almost worked in the opposite direction because there were so many senior leaders. I think there was like a loss of, well, who's taking charge or who's there's always the rank structure, of course, but who's going to be the platoon dad and the platoon mom or whatever. You know what I mean? There was just so much overlap that there never really seemed to be any one person that really like took up the um, uh, uh, I guess that role or that position. But when I was down at a battalion or a company, there was 100% a staff sergeant or a captain that would just, I think they had more of that opportunity to check in with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, but sometimes that kind of works in a different way where you're like, okay, but he's kind of mean. Like I actually don't really enjoy talking to this person, so I'm just gonna go be over here. Yeah, I'm gonna try and avoid this person as much
yeah.
as I can.
It is a unique experience
Yes.
when one of the biggest jerks in the unit, and I'm saying jerk because it's a polite show,
Yes.
when one of the biggest jerks in the unit comes up to you after a traumatic experience, claps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, man, how you doing?"
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. It's like,
Yeah.
really, you're the guy that's going to come and ask me this?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny you say that, Dan, because I had some pretty similar experiences too, where when the chips are down, the ones that not this isn't always the case, but the ones that you would least suspect often end up being the ones who will surprise you in a good way.
I was very fortunate to have when I was down at this company. Uh, I had a staff sergeant who I believe he did 7 deployments in 9 years.
Wow.
He was a Silver Star recipient, um, a Purple Heart, and he had this blackness in his eyes that I don't know. I'm sure you gentlemen have seen it where you're like, dude, you were fried. Like you have gone to the edge of space and you have looked over, and then it's like we're trying to have you coming back. Like the guy was just, and he was, he was a very brash man. He was very short, but he was very honest. Just one of those guys where you're like, dude, I'm just happy you're on our team. You know what I mean? Um, I never enjoyed talking to him because I always knew I did something wrong. And in all fairness, I did do something wrong. Like he was such a master craft at it. Um, but he'd let you know, and it's like he wouldn't call you stupid or anything else like that. But I think if anything, it was like, man, I always feel like I'm letting this guy down. Like you'll hold him up to such high regard.
Yeah.
Um, and I always felt kind of stupid when I talked to him. But he was a prior grunt who switched over to Intel because the signing bonus at the time was like $110,000. The only thing higher for signing bonus at the time in Intel was EOD because that's a, don't make it
Yeah,
that long. Uh, so, and he was a very intelligent person. Obviously, he was intelligent enough to move into intel. And the reason why he had done so many deployments because this was his retirement. He was like, like, to him, he's like, I got it all figured out. I'm saving all of my money. I'm putting it in like ETFs, like mutual funds. Um, and I think he was from Washington or Oregon. I think it was Washington. And he's like, I already got like, I have land that I want to buy. I'm going to buy this land. I'm going to build a house. I'm going to build a house for my parents. He was single. He had no kids. He was at the time, I thought he was super old. He was probably my age now. He's probably like 36 or something.
So old.
And I know, but when you're 20,
Yeah,
26 is like, dang, dude, you're getting up there. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I knew a few guys like that. I knew a few guys like that that had a very mapped out way that they wanted things to go. Sometimes it went that way, sometimes it didn't.
Last time I talked to him, I was getting ready to get out, and by happenstance, he was at the White House. Um, I believe it was like a security thing. Like he had to re up his investigation or something, but he ended up getting orders. Like basically, it was like a golden parachute moment. Um, he was going to go work for the DIA. Very intelligent person, good leader, great leader. But for me, I think I just needed more time in the oven. You
Yeah.
know, it was my first deployment. It was like his 10th. So
So you said that you were there. That first deployment was uh, a little over 10 months for you.
yeah, correct.
Okay, so and you came home before the rest of your unit.
Correct. Yeah, I came home Pearl Harbor December 7th.
Why were you sent home ahead of time?
You know what? I hate to say this, but because it sounds really stupid, but I developed a bacterial infection. Um, when I was with LAR, you know, they weren't the best sanitation stand. Well, I mean, like their sanitation standards, and we still shaved every day and everything else like that. But you're out in the boondocks, right? You're I'm sure you guys did this too, where you have to shower with like the water bladders that would like out there and just pressure and everything else. All right. So I'm taking a shower like once every 4 days or maybe once a week or something like that. And it's super sandy. We're not getting our clothes washed. You're out in the bush. I had what's called a pilonidal cyst that got infected. So the way the bottom portion of I don't know if either one of you are doctors here, but your coccyx, which is the last bone in your spine,
Mhm.
um, it only is almost predominantly found in white men. But when your skin goes over it, you could get these small like pinhole dimples, basically at like the base of your spine, and they're super small, just little like small little divots. Something got in there. I don't know what it was. Some sand that got infected, whatever. And I would have deposits of blood. At first, I thought it was a hemorrhoid because of the proximity, right? And I like had to get a preparation H mailed out. Thank God for Amazon. Amazon came in clutch. This is a plug actually for Amazon. I'd like order preparation H to get sent over to me in Afghanistan. Suppositories and the cream.
It
I
went in.
probably had it. Yeah, I probably had a hemorrhoid too. Who knows? Um, so I would have like a discharge of blood. It was kind of like a period. It happened like once a month. Basically, it would just like build up and so much pressure. And then when I would sit down or something like that, it would just a gush of blood. And it was like getting through my camis and everything. And my staff sergeant was like, "Hey man, I think you need to go to like what do we call it? Like medical, right?"
Signal or whatever.
Yeah,
Pixabay. Yeah.
yeah. Now this is a podcast, so I don't want to go too far into this either. But man, the Navy, they got some stereotypes and they got some, whew, they're like, hey, we need to do a prostate exam. And you're like, hold up. And I got a prostate exam.
It's an ear infection. What? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. I'm not kidding. Uh, yeah, totally inappropriate. He's like, hey man, I actually don't know what this is. Like, we actually have to, like, we're gonna have to, this is gonna go above us. So then I got sent to like, I can't remember, but it was still at, shoot, it was still at, it was like on the British side of the base. It was like the medevac. What a disappointing moment that was. Um, yeah, it's just that whole experience. There's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sorry if I'm drifting here, but they're like, hey, so you don't have like, at least I don't think you have prostate cancer. And you're like, good to know. I told you that wasn't the problem. It's further north, but whatever. Um, so they sent me over to um, like the Cassavac station, and this British guy, bless his heart, kept trying to give me an IV. And he kept missing. And I was like, dude, it's like he stuck me like 6 times. Maybe I was dehydrated. I have no idea. But they looked at it and they're like, we have to make an incision like right now. Like this thing is like bad. I don't know if you know this. I was like, that's funny because the Navy guy said, we just can't figure this out. To this day, it's probably the second worst experience I've ever had, like worst pain, where they just did an incision, no anesthesia or anything else like that. And it's like the closest thing I could explain is like if you've ever had like a searing hot pain, like you touched something that shouldn't have been touched, because it was insane. It was that kind, like immediately in your head. It's like you're coming online. You're like, ting, like
You
they
got
did
your
an
full.
incision. Yeah. And they had to like basically butterfly the base of my or the bottom of my spine a little bit, like pack it with gauze. Or like, yo, we need to like send you to Bagram, and you might actually like I hate to tell you this, but we actually feel like we have to like Cassavac you. Like this whole thing is infected. We call this at this point, this is like a life. And I'm like, I am fine. I've like, dude. I mean, I didn't walk here.
Life on the right side.
Yeah, like I'm fine. I've been trying to. I kept trying to stay, and it finally got to a point where they're like, "No, Nolan, you're going home." Right. So I ended up having to get sent over to Bagram and on a bird, and that was a very upsetting moment because here I am on this plane, and they gave me I never had taken Percocet before, and they're like, "Do you want some painkillers?" I was like, "I mean, sure, I've never taken them before, and I haven't at the time, right?" I thought it was going to be like Advil. They gave me Percocet. I was just like two sheets to the wind, just
He saw pink
out of
elephants. Yeah.
yeah, just out of my mind. But they're putting me on this plane with those other medevac casualties that are. We had to make a stop in Bagram, and then we had to fly to Landstuhl, Germany, right? And I'm on this military aircraft, and here's me, still in my camis. I had but because we're flying out of Bagram, you had to wear your bulletproof vest still. So I still have my IFAC on and my helmet, but I had to like turn on my rifle, everything. And everybody else on this plane, with the exception of a few army people that I won't say anything about, they're in like basically like these bubble ICUs, right? And I could see through it, and there's people missing arms, there's people missing legs, and they're in a medically induced coma, like on these gurneys that are, bubble wrapped. Um, and then there's me just sitting down, like, yep, I'm bleeding, from back there. They got to send me home. And um, when I went to Bagram, they looked at it, and I had to do like a TBI screening. I had to do also the other. It was just like we're just boilerplate stuff. They're like, hey, we're gonna schedule surgery for you, but we're just gonna like schedule your surgery like back in the States. And I was like, oh. Awesome. Okay. They're like, "Do you want more Percocet?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take some more Percocet, sure."
One for the road. Yeah.
But I had to be in Bagram for like 10 days before I could. And the best part is they're like, "You're going to take Comme, commercial airlines out from Germany back to the States." I was like, "Oh, okay, awesome." They're like, "Yeah, give us like 10 days to like get all your paperwork processed and everything." So I was staying at the USO Navy or nurses something. I can't remember what it was called, but there's basically like a nurses station, and I had to sleep on a cot. I felt like a homeless person. Um,
You
the
were a
silver
homeless.
lining, I was a homeless person. The silver lining in all of this was, I mean, just some great stories. There was an Army Sergeant First Class, this big burly black guy, and he's like, "Hey, man," and I'm still wearing it. Now, Afghanistan was kind of cold because I was leaving in December. Um, but I had just had all my boots. I didn't have any civilian clothes or anything else like that. And he's like, "Hey, man, I lost my big toe." He was a Green Beret, and he's like, "Hey, man, I lost my big toe. I can't really wear flip flops anymore. Do you want them?" And I was like, "You mean I get to get flip flops from a Green Beret? Like, yeah, I'm gonna take them." And he gave me his flip flops. It was the coolest thing. He really did get his toe blown off, his big toe.
You still have
Hmm.
those flip flops?
No, I lost him in a fire. That's another story.
Ah,
Well, on that cheery free flip flop note, let's go ahead
Yeah.
and take a break. So you get evac for an infection um, a month or so before the rest of your unit returns. By the time they got back, were you still uh, recovering from the infection because it had gotten pretty bad?
Yeah, I ended up having a surgery, and um they ended up giving me I had a surgery, and then maybe 2 months later I had a follow-up surgery. They didn't get it all the first time. And on my second surgery, they gave me like 90 pills of Percocet and 30 days off. And it was too much. That's too much power for a young person.
and we wonder where the opioid crisis came from, right?
Yeah, that's a whole nother story for another day. After I got out, for sure. That legitimately is actually a story. But you know what? Something that I actually I dealt with for a long time is that because I came home early and I didn't come home, and I never really got to like have that signing off goodbye, signing off goodbye. Like in a way, I didn't really feel like I got the same closure a lot of those guys and girls that I was serving with in that unit. That when they came home, it was almost um, like as if I never even deployed with them, right? Where it's like, "Oh, what's up, dude? You're here," and it's like, "Yeah, man. It's only been like four, depending on because people deployed in like shifts. Like there was like an add-on party and everything else like that. So it was anywhere between like 4 weeks to 6 or 7 weeks later, right? Again, doesn't seem like a long time, but when you're overseas, time kind of stands still, right?
Yeah.
It was weird. And then as soon as we came back, you had this big rotation. People were EASing, their contracts were expiring. They were going to different units. They were reenlisting, going to different units. So in a way, it's like I never really felt like I got this closure on that deployment.
Yeah, kind of a fizzle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It was a
Yeah.
fizzle to a big thing. So yeah.
How long did it take from the time that you got back? How long did it take for you to readjust to being stateside again?
I think because of the way that I came back and my time in Germany was kind of like a good precursor, kind of like a cool down kind of moment where you get to go hang out in Germany for like 10 days. And when I came home, it was I came home December 7th, and I think I had like my first um, surgery like immediately after, before Christmas, and then I was on like a medical break for a couple weeks, and I was able to be home for Christmas with my family. It was definitely an adjustment. It was an adjustment of like, oh, I've never heard this song before. I've never seen this music video. This is when music videos were still really big. New cars came out, right? There was a lot of changes like that that took a little bit of time to adjust to, like just trying to acclimate again with like the culture. Um, but snapping back into the regular humdrum of uh, life in the rear, with a main side unit no longer deployed, definitely took some time where you would still I don't you know what I definitely was not one of those people where if I heard a firecracker I would jump to the ground. That's not who I was. That's not who I am today. um if anything, it's like I just want to take everything in. I want to try and conceptualize what's going on. But there was definitely moments of like just a hyper vigilance on a lot of things that, again, as the years have gone on, it's and years of counseling, years of therapy, years of talking to fellow veterans, um, that a lot of that has kind of like subsided. Um, but to answer your question, uh, I don't know, in short, maybe 2 months, 3 months to being like, okay, this is back where we're at. But again, I think because I was on a medical hold or a medical block of leave and painkillers, I think for me kind of like fast tracked a lot of that too. So where like I didn't have to show up to work for, I don't know, I think it was like 30 days or something like that, and just I could just hang out in my apartment. I ended up getting married when I got home, and um, go for a walk, kind of like gather your thoughts that normally that wouldn't be afforded to you, right?
You guys had another deployment coming.
Yeah,
How
yeah. And then
how
we deployed
long?
again.
Yeah, how long had the unit been back before you found out that you were deploying again?
Uh, Shoot, because we deployed it in January in 2012. I want to say by like maybe May or June.
May or June
I
of
mean, that's,
2011, you found out that you were going to be deploying again.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
So you guys hadn't been back for very long at all.
No, and no, and the basis for that is that there was so much rotation that when we got back, a lot of the people, probably 90% of the people that deployed the first time were not the same people deploying the second time. I was one of the very select few
Yeah.
that was deploying the second time. And
Yeah.
the second deployment was 100% worse because it didn't have the novelty.
Yeah. Because there were so many new people in the unit going into that second deployment during all of your during all of your train up leading to it. Do you feel like you were able to really use your own personal experiences to help the new guys come along?
No, I actually feel like I did worse the second deployment. The second deployment with the newer unit had a lot of people from Okinawa. That it was then their first deployment. Um, Again, we had to backfill, right? So we had a lot more of newer people that were doing it, and then we were ripping with Second Marine Division, and again, that was Camp Lejeune, the Marines Marine, and they did business almost entirely different than us. They didn't use a lot of the same SOPs that we set up, and I think this is a personal opinion. This is a Cassidy Nolan opinion. I think because we were setting up in 2010 on that Obama troop surge where they were like, just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. A lot of stuff that we were setting up just didn't carry over for one reason or another. Maybe it wasn't the best way to do it, or it wasn't optimized, or it was just not necessary. Or again, the our our unit, the unit that replaced us, just wanted to do their own thing. So when we ripped again with them a year later in 2012, it was like, hey, this is the same workbench that I sat at, just the year prior. But everything else, a lot of things had changed. So I felt like I had to relearn everything, and I had to learn it the way that they were doing it now. And the way that they were doing it was not as intuitive as the way I felt, was not as intuitive as the way that we were doing it. Like, in a way, we didn't maintain the same thread along the way. And it's like, if it got adjusted, it wasn't adjusted by a little bit. The whole thing, it's like the original, what we created was just thrown right in the trash and they started over. And I'm not saying that our way was better. I am saying that when you're doing this like rip TOA, um, you want to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. And for us, I felt like, well, and you know what? Maybe there's a lot of arrogance on my part where I felt like, man, I just did this a year ago. I'm going to be fine. And, come to find out, like, I'm not fine. You know.
Yeah.
So I will take personal responsibility in that sense too. I felt like I was absolutely lost in the sauce on the second deployment, where a lot of our collections platforms, the assets themselves haven't changed, but the way that we were using it had changed. The way to request the assets had changed. The
Yeah.
tempo had changed entirely. Where on the first deployment in 2010, a lot of it was drug interdiction operations, ISR oversight, so, uh, 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 like calling in air support, Overwatch. On the second deployment, it was a lot. Everything was just really toned down. I don't think that we were as kinetic on the second deployment as we were on the first one. So just even the culture, the way that we were doing it had changed too. So I really struggled on the second deployment. And again, I think there was a lot of internal battles there of like, I can't believe I'm back here again, And it's like we're actually doing even
Groundhog
less.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was exactly Groundhog's Day. I think I was battling with a lot of depression at the time personally.
Were you still a lance corporal at this point, or had you been promoted?
I had been promoted to corporal,
Okay.
so I had a marginally more authority, and more um, autonomy, but I was still very much low on the totem pole. And the unit that I deployed with, like again with these new people, I honestly really struggled fitting in, or kind of jiving with everyone, and I definitely bumped heads with a lot of the senior leaders. And it wasn't because I felt like I knew everything, but I just felt, hey, we did this a year ago. Ease up. This isn't my first rodeo, and I feel like maybe that was not the best mindset to have.
They were not. They were not leaning on your experience, your very recent
No,
experience.
no, not at all. No, not even a little bit. No, I had, if anything, the first time around, I had more of that. Let's say,
Okay.
the irony is, I do work well with others, but
Like a
God
disclaimer.
save you, God save you if you don't take lightly to, I don't want to say constructive criticism, but maybe a different perspective, or and on top of that, allowing the opportunity, right? Where it's like, hey, look, you can't, you're not going to beta test every idea. I get that, but like, hey, have you thought about maybe this? Or like, I'm just going to open the floor to ideas or concepts. I felt like on the second deployment, there was just a lot of like really big heads.
It was more. It was more rigid.
Yes, maybe because the tempo had slowed down, so it offered that opportunity.
So How long was the second tour?
I actually was only there for like 3 months. Again, I got sent home early. Yeah.
Did you get
Now,
another
why did you
infection?
get? No, no, no. Surprisingly, it wasn't that. I was selected to go home with maybe five other individuals. Like I said, 90% of that second deployment was of the new guard, and maybe 10% of it was from the old one. And I think because of the friction that I might have been causing in my shop, um, I was selected along with a bunch of other individuals that were there on the first deployment to go home early because by 2012, it was the troop drawdown. So
Mm,
interesting enough, I was part of the troop surge and I was part of the troop drawdown. So it was very disappointing to put everything in storage, move my wife back to Napa, sign a year-long lease, you know, just to be overseas for 3 months and then come back home.
the new guard, you said, pretty much all came from Okinawa, right?
Mostly, yeah, not all of them. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm not trying to.
Of the people that were sent back with you, how many of them were from Pendleton
My
versus?
it, all of them. Yeah,
Okay.
there was not a single. There was not a single Okinawa person that I recall that came home with me. Almost all of us, like I said, that came home were from the original deployment.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what a time.
Yeah. So your original enlistment had been for 5 years, and you are rapidly approaching that mark.
Correct. Yeah. So came home from the second deployment, and again, First Marine Division G2 near Division Intelligence. We were called the revolving door. There was always a lot of turnover, always a lot of turnover, and you could basically map a lot of the turnover would happen um, either right before or right after a deployment. So that's hence the reason why there's so much turnover after the first one. And by the second deployment, I'm still here, but my enlistment isn't done, so I'm not really rated to change duty stations. And my master gunnery sergeant says, "Hey Nolan, I got the best opportunity for you. You're a seasoned corporal. You're one of the best ones in the shop." I don't know if he said that or not, but I'm going to pretend that he did.
We'll
And I
go with
went,
it.
and I'm going to send you over to third tracks to be their acting intelligence chief and officer because both of them are gone. Like there's just nobody there doing intelligence whatsoever. They don't have a single person.
That just sounds funny. There's nobody there doing intelligence
There's,
now.
I mean, I checked into the unit, and they're like, "Hey, here's
There's
the
no
key."
intelligence. None.
There's no
I thought
intelligence.
it was
Yeah,
common practice for
yes,
Marines to have no intelligence.
exactly. There
Purple.
was zero intelligence. That's about intelligence. Uh,
That's right.
yeah, you get it.
Well played.
Yeah. Uh, so they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The previous guy gave us the keys. Here you go." And I opened a door to a room, and it was just there was two computers and two chairs, and I was like, "All right, I'm gonna get to work." And for third tracks, that unit, I believe at the time was the most disciplined unit in the Marine Corps in the worst way, where disciplined in the sense they got the most that people from that unit had the most like DUIs, spousal abuse, drug pops, that kind of discipline. Like they themselves were getting disciplined, right?
Typical
Because
stuff. Yeah.
typical stuff. But I mean, if you look at that unit on a whole, it's one of the Marine Corps' like only amphibious units, and we're supposed to be an amphibious warfighting unit. Um, but they're in these like archaic antique machines that have been around since Vietnam, super slow. They call them coffins because they
Yep.
got a flat bottom, you know, and they sent them over to Iraq where they'd roll over an IED and just the entire explosion would just go right up.
That's how they were getting them written off the books.
They were for a time, and they were going to get replaced by this like super sweet. It was like a jet powered turbine, and it'd get on a plane, right? But the DoD, aka DOW now, um, basically mothballed the whole thing because it was insanely expensive. Go figure. So they're in this super old rig that I believe more Marines died in training exercises because bilge pumps would go out or certain safety precautions were overlooked or something. So, unfortunately, a whole bunch of Marines had passed away. And they're basically, other than going on a a Marine Expeditionary Unit, no different. We were talking about earlier about like a QRF force.
Yeah.
Um, they really weren't, a lot of them were, you show up to work and you don't really do anything, right? They obviously they did do training and they did just menial jobs though, right? So they'd always have a lot of free time. They didn't know what to do. They'd always get in trouble. But I was given the situation and it was one of those like, okay, what do you guys need? And a lot of them needed security checks. Kind of a menial task for me, but I was happy to do it. So I do a lot of like security checks for people who were trying to re-enlist or they were lap moving. A lot of them wanted new maps to do for their training exercises. I would do intelligence briefs for things that were going on in Afghanistan or around the world. Again, if they were looking at like a new, I finally got a lieutenant a couple months in when I was there. Him and I actually shared the same birthday. It was kind of a crazy trip. We still talk to this day. Great guy, and he's a Annapolis grad. Now he has like a private sailing
And he's
team
a great
going.
guy. Hmm.
He is, yeah, yeah, he is. Good man. He ended up becoming a, a good mentor in his own way.
Quick question: in the Marine Corps, does the S2 function still regulate and control the arms rooms?
No, not at all.
Okay,
What's
that's an Army thing then. Okay.
the arms? As in like your armory?
Yes.
Oh no, not oh no, please no.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know the history behind how in the army that's how it shook out. Dan, I don't know if you know a story on that, but yeah, that's a S2 function for us.
Is that like an inventory kind of maybe aspect? Because the intel
Well,
guys are
again,
really
so
better with.
that respective commander is ultimately responsible for what comes in and out of his arms room or her arms room for sure. But I'm talking about inspections.
Oh, if it does, it was beyond my pay grade. So maybe I'm
Okay.
talking with arrogance right now or
But
ignorance.
I'm saying you were never
Oh,
sent down to inspect, Bravo Company's arms room or any of
zero,
that stuff. Okay. Yeah,
zero
yeah.
times. No, zero times. Um, but that's what I ended up doing until maybe a month or two before I were to separate, and then from there I went back to my old unit, and I was offered an opportunity to reenlist, but I'd have to go to most likely like get orders to Lejeune, excuse me, and um, my wife had just given birth to our first child, and I was like, look, I'm really struggling. Um, I think internally I'm really struggling right now, and we've deployed twice. I feel like the tempo isn't going to slow down. This is now in 2013,
Yeah.
and um, I really enjoyed my time at Tracks, third Tracks, and I was hoping that could have stayed longer, but it didn't. It was a short time until, like I said, they could backfill the position, and I ended up getting like an award from. I got like a NAM, and I just decided to get out, so I ended up EASing.
Did you know um, before your window opened? Did you know that you were going to be getting out, or was it just something that
Yeah,
you
I
didn't really think about until it was
I knew I you know what I knew I was going to get out when I was at Tracks. I remember talking to my lieutenant, um, and telling him like, "Hey, I'm having a good time over here. I don't want basically like I don't want to go back to my old unit, right? The entire vibe changed, everything changed. I don't really want to go back. Um, if I could stay here, like if I knew I could stay here for 4 more years and reenlist, I would. Um, Maybe a lot of that is coming from the tempo slowing down. I wanted to be there for my wife. I wanted to be there for my daughter. Like the thing about being at Tracks is you really did work a 9 to 5, right? I mean, it's not really a 9 to 5. You get there at 7:30 and you would leave by like
Yeah, yeah.
4:30, but
But it's still
um,
predictable. Yeah.
it was predictable.
Yeah.
And when I was at Division Intelligence, I felt like it was really chaotic a lot of the times. The tempos had changed, like I said, just and then there would be bureaucracy and
The
sometimes there would be
constant
like some crony.
turnover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There was
Yeah.
just it seemed like every day was a new thing, and it often meant a new struggle. And when I was at tracks, even though it was like the super disciplined unit with a bunch of guys who are really struggling, for me, like I was in my own bubble and I was excelling really well at that. And um, I knew if I had to go back, I would probably end up in some similar situation to that. And I just didn't want to roll the dice. I'm not a gambler. I hate gambling, with real money at least. So um, I just knew it's like I could be a master of my own destiny if I get out, right? And so the defining moment, believe it or not, was a video that popped up on my thread, and it was the yes, no, yes, it has to be that. There's no way it can't. It is, yeah, it's the 2011 Stanford commencement address
Is that the
by
H.R. McMaster's one?
no, no, very good though. No, it is, yeah, I was trying to make sure it was I had the year correct. The 2011 Stanford commencement address by Steve Jobs.
Okay.
It's 15 minutes long. I if there's and there's over 1 million views on it, at least 1,000 are from me because I'll periodically go back to it at least once every 2 months now. But this YouTube video of Steve Jobs talking about uh, um, his life lessons and sort of journey was arguably one of the most inspirational things I had ever heard at the time. And he said, stay hungry, stay foolish. That was his kind of signing off. And think of him what you will. I'm not saying he was the most. He was a visionary. He wasn't, and he was in some ways he was an engineer, but he wasn't the sole engineer. It was really Steve Wozniak that did a lot of the like grunt work. And Steve Jobs was intelligent enough to surround himself with very good talent that could build things right the way that he wanted it. But this concept of like, do what you love, have faith in the process, never give up. Um, I just felt like I joined the Marine Corps at 18 and I did it on a whim, right? I didn't talk to a whole bunch of people. I didn't do the DEP program for a year. I didn't talk to a recruiter a year out in advance. I just said, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go do this. And I did it. And I feel like I've done everything I've wanted to do at this point. Kind of at that point was like, I don't know if the CIA or the FBI is going to work out. You need a degree, you know, and I think it's time for me to get out. I don't want to deploy again right now. I already did it. I did it. I did what I was asked to do. I did it to the best of my ability. Um, I think through the years, the Marine Corps and everything else kind of beat me down in a way. This all sounds like I'm not trying to leave on a downer here, but like it kind of just took a lot of that motivation. I was filled with like piss and vinegar when I joined, and by the time that I was getting out, it was kind of like I think I probably would have done great with like just a 6 month, sabbatical, honestly,
Yeah.
which is not afforded to you. Um, or if I would have done it, if they would have been like, "Hey, Nolan, we know we've been working you really hard. Look, man, just go take some time off at this unit for like a couple of years, and let's circle back and see where we're at." Right,
Yeah.
something
I
like
mean, I
that.
know guys, I mean, this is mostly on the officer side, but I do know guys who had breaks in service. Again, it's not a sanctioned program. It's just
Right.
guys had to take a knee. They had some of them, they had family members with cancer, or they needed to go do something else for a couple of years. And again, I could speak more to the officer side. On the enlisted, it's going to be different, but they found ways to make it back in after a year or two and just kind of picked up where they left off. I mean, their cohort changed for peer purposes, which is a whole other discussion. But I mean, that thing does exist. But I respect people who serve, and then when they don't want to do it anymore, serve honorably, and then walk away. Because
Yeah.
Dan and I were career guys, and Lord knows we know enough guys who probably should have walked away but didn't because they were close to a career, or they needed a pension, or their kid was sick, or what for whatever reason, and they
or
just
or they couldn't do anything else, and
yeah,
that's probably the worst.
yeah,
You for sure can get institutionalized and they become handcuffs, right? You get used to that quality of life or standard of living, and you say, I'm an E6, again, on the enlisted side, or, within 6 years, I just made O3. What are the chances I'm going to make the same pay or whatever on the outside because I went to ASU and I got a degree in poli sci and I'm not looking to like be an attorney or something.
hey, how
Right.
dare you?
So, you know, did I get you, Roger? Are you a poli
That was
sci
a little
major?
close to home, but I, however, went to East Carolina University, which is Dan. What is it?
It's the Harvard of Eastern North Carolina.
That's right.
Okay. Is that what your slogan says?
That's what I call it. That's an original.
All right, that's fair. Um, I met plenty of those guys. I completely agree and understand what you're saying. And um, the lifers I had a lot of respect for, especially if they're like, no man, I love what I do. And when they find that groove, like that staff sergeant I was telling you about, for the record, he did get out for, and like I said, he was a grunt originally, and then he came over to Intel. He was out for like, I want to say like 6 to 8 months. And this is, the recession of 2008. So he was like, yeah, there's like no job. So I ended up just coming back and I moved into Intel and I got, this huge payout. And he had done like the bulwark of his deployments. He was part of the first push in Iraq, right?
Yeah, Thunder Run.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so for him, in similar vein, whether he played the game, I don't know, but I know that those do exist. They just were not afforded to me, and I didn't have a good mentor that would have allowed it. Um, I think if I would have taken a job at a duty station, like a recruiting station, something like that, to just again, like, hey man, you know, pump on the brakes a little bit. In fact, all right, if anything, if I could circle back to the very first bit that I was talking about of why people join the service, right? Here's my take. This is a Cassidy Nolan opinion. The people who join that are looking for that upper mobility, that are coming out of this tumultuous childhood kind of thing, statistically, a lot of them are already emotionally scarred in some way, right? They already have trauma. You go overseas, you experience more trauma, right? By the time that you're now coming of age, for me, I'm 23. It's like, man, all I've experienced for a good portion of my life is some jacked up stuff for a good while now. And I could really benefit from talking to somebody. I could really benefit talking about child abuse as a problem, as a childhood, or child abuse in general. Just like, tease out these problems. And I tried talking to somebody. It was a Navy psychiatrist, and it was brought to my attention that because you have a top secret clearance, this could jeopardize your clearance, right? And that female friend of mine that I told you about who had deployed for a year to Iraq, came home for 2 months, then deployed again for a year to Afghanistan, and then was getting asked to go on that second deployment in 2012 because she came into the unit after the first deployment. She ended up having a breakdown, and um, she was asked, ultimately, she was not allowed to reenlist. So I kind of felt for me, I'm just at the end of the day, I don't feel like I was getting, and I could say this now as an older man. I wasn't getting the help I think I really needed at the time, and I wasn't dealing with my issues in the most appropriate way. And Percocet really helped. and then it became alcohol. And I was never like, I might have been like a sloppy drunk, one or two times, but I never did anything super bad other than, that whole drinking in public and whatever. And I probably made some other poor decisions and I just got very lucky, knock on wood. Um, but I feel like that's one of the biggest struggles for a lot of service members today and those that are getting out, like myself after the, first enlistment, where you're subjected to a lot of childhood trauma. It gets exacerbated while you're in the Marine Corps or the military. And then when you get out, you're just stuck with this bag of trauma from, generations and like,
Yeah.
different, um, your entire childhood was trauma. And then the first portion of your adult life has been so much traumatic. And it's like, how do you deal with that? How do you process it? How do you move on from, how do you confront it and move on from it? Um, I think a lot of that had a huge impact on me. And again, it was like, you know what? I'm going to get out of the Marine Corps. And I know that I'm married. I have a 3-month-old daughter. Um, that's not true. I think she was like 9 months. And I have a truck. I have a motorcycle. I have a car or, a TV. I have all this house items that I never had when I joined because when I joined, I had a Ford Bronco and a Boost mobile phone, and that was it. And then when I got out, and I have all this other stuff. And it's like I don't know what I'm gonna do. And um when I was at tracks, I told my lieutenant, I said, hey, I think I'm gonna get out if I can't stay here, because I think I need like a decompression time. If I can't stay here, I'm gonna get out. And he said, what are you gonna do, Nolan? And I said, I used to date this girl in high school who's her father is a Vietnam veteran, he's a Marine, and he has a Purple Heart recipient, and he has a porta potty business. I'm gonna see him. I'm gonna call him up and see if I could come work for him. That's exactly what I did. And he gave me a hard time. He said, Nolan, you're gonna go from intelligence to cleaning porta potties. And I said, yes, sir, I am.
I mean, it's remarkably similar.
Did you clean porta potties too, or oh, just in general? Yeah.
It's more of a metaphor, but yes.
Yeah, you know what? It was to this day, it's probably one of the best jobs I ever had because I only worked 2 days a week. I worked two 10-hour shifts.
And everybody poops.
Everybody poops, but it's like I was left alone. iPods were still a thing, and I would just put in my iPod. I'd listen to music. I drive a big pooper truck, and I drive out to wineries. This is all in Napa. It's beautiful wine country. So I drive up and down the valley, left to my own devices, clean up poop, and that was it. That was a day. And then I went to school. I went back to that same college that I dropped out of, and I was a full-time student. And in order for us to pay rent and have food and everything, I would moonlight as a waiter at a nice restaurant. I won't say which one because it sounds bad that I was also cleaning poop. Um, and I'd work
Not at the same
nights.
time, Dan. Calm down.
No. Well, sometimes I would have like a double shift. Like on a Wednesday, I'd have to get up really early to clean all because you could set your own hours, right? So I'd wake up really early. I'd clean all the porta potties and I'd be done by like, I don't know, 2:30 or 3. And then I'd have a shift from like 5 to 11 as a waiter. And I would do that. Like, go home, take a shower. I'd go to the gym, take a shower, and then I do that. And um, that for sure wore on me because I was also a student. So I also had homework to do. But I was never like a slouch um, when I had to be. I was an underachiever in high school. Like I said, I did well enough on my ASVAB to do intelligence. In fact, the recruiting instructor or the recruiter said you could do any job the Marine Corps offers. You know, and I did intelligence. That's what I wanted to do, and I originally wanted to buy this porta potty business, but I couldn't afford it. I didn't have anybody to co-sign with me. I only owned a truck, so I had no collateral I could borrow against. And he wanted, $250,000, and I just didn't have the money. So I doubled down on school, and a counselor said, "Hey, Cassie, you have decent enough grades. There's a really good business school down the street called Berkeley Haas." And I said, all right, what are the chances I get in there? She's like, I think if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're going to get in. So I kept working, and I created the Veterans Club at Napa Valley College, and did a lot of community work. We had like barbecues, we had um, Earth Day cleanups. Believe it or not, I'm big for the environment, and town halls. This got some recognition in the community, and I was awarded the 2016 Veteran of the Year by Senator Bill Dodd. I won a car, and I got accepted into Cal. Went to Berkeley Haas. I got my business degree, and was president of the Veterans Club there. We had tailgate parties. It was the best time of my life. It was like the beginning years of the Marine Corps all over again. Um, and I think that's definitely a big takeaway is to any service members today, young and old. Don't be afraid to like do something new. Do something different. Do something that's off the reservation. Um, don't be afraid to push your comfort zone, and never feel like you're too old or not smart enough or whatever to go out and like achieve your dreams. Um, it was one of the best decisions I made, and I've made some lifelong friends. People ironically, a lot of the guys that were at Cal with me were the same people who were overseas at the same time, because the time works out, right? They also got out after 4 or 5 years or whatever. So a lot of us had shared experiences. A lot of us were deployed in the same area, just ships passing at night, right?
Yep.
Um, there was one guy I even saw. I won't say his name. When I was transferring out, when I was like EASing, he was transferring in to that unit. So it's like, dude, do you remember me? Hey, we were both First Marine Division. And you know, and he went to Cal himself. So just it's a small world moment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
So you get your fancy business degree from Cal Berkeley. Is that what you said?
yeah, go Bears.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then yeah, I took a job as an accountant for the Clorox company,
Okay.
and I made beer, and I made hot sauce because my wife bought me a beer making kit, and like I said, I grew up in a restaurant. So fell in love with the fermentation process. I was a terrible accountant to this day, terrible. And I would give out beer and hot sauce to my work colleagues where they're like, he's not so bad after all, right? You know?
Well, if you kept them lit, so they didn't have to look at your books. Well played, sir. Well played.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so I was doing that, and COVID hit, right? Infamous COVID. We all had to navigate that debacle of COVID, but I was working from home, and interest rates were super low. So my wife and I were like, hey, we're in a position to buy a house. Let's buy a house because the rates are so low. And we bought a house June 15th of 2020. House burnt down August 18th of 2020. There goes the flip flops. And, it's my wife and I, have 4 kids, a dog and a cat. We're in a hotel room now. We're like, all right, well, we have no worldly possessions holding us down. Like, where do we want to go? What do you want to do? And I said, I think I'm going to go back to grad school and get my MBA because I don't want to do accounting anymore. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback from hot sauce. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from beer. Like maybe I do that. I didn't want to buy all the beer making equipment and stuff because you'd have to like schlep it around. And once again, we're in a hotel. We're trying to find a house to rent. So I just bought stuff to make hot sauce because it's a small jar, right? Compared to like a big vat. And I just doubled down on the hot sauce. I was working on a business plan. I'm going through grad school, and I got headhunted by Tony La Russa, if you're a baseball fan. So he won the World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals, and he has a nonprofit in Walnut Creek, which is like 45 minutes east of San Francisco. And they're like, hey, we love your work. You're a veteran. Um, you're soon to be a graduate, and you have a lot of relevant experience. You know, you've been really big in the community. We'd like for you to apply. And I ended up getting this job. And I was a director there where we'd go around California to shelters to find dogs and cats, predominantly dogs, that exhibited behavior of being a service animal. And we'd vet them, and um, we would then train them to be service animals, and then we would give them to veterans that wanted a service animal, what we called saving both ends of the leash. It was a very rewarding experience. And it was hard for me to say no. It was kind of like a dream job moment. And they flew me around in a private jet that was owned by Purina. And went to Vegas, and just getting a bunch of donor money, and it was a great, just absolutely great experience. But there ended up being a shakeup with management. The CEO that had hired me retired soon after, and the new CEO that came on, just a lot of people didn't jive with, and the LaRusses themselves ended up divesting themselves of their own nonprofit that they created, and it ended up being a mass exodus, myself included. And at that point, I said, I think it's time for me to, again, just start out on my own and see what happens. And I launched Mach 1 Hot Sauce back in 2023. I'd like to say it was a runaway success, but
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, that's a that's a lot. That is a
yeah,
lot.
I, we talked to a brewer earlier this week. I thought we were going to get our second brewer in less than a week, Dan. But
making beer is a lot of fun. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend going on Amazon, buying a homebrew kit. It's like $50. It'll come with everything you need to make at least one six pack. If you drink alcohol, if you don't, then for sure it's not a good idea. But it's a rewarding experience, because there's this sense of like, dude, I made this,
Mhm.
and I enjoy drinking a beer. Who doesn't? It's just and you really have to love the craft. But I will say this: the most rewarding experience, other than drinking it, is when you pitch your yeast and it becomes this living organism moment, and you see what's called a flocculation, when the yeast is converting the sugars into alcohol. But the bottle itself kind of looks like this like lava lamp sort of thing. You could see this entire like scientific process that's occurring right in front of you. And it looks really cool, and you're like, you get super excited. You're like, oh man, what is this going to taste like? Because it takes, realistically, it takes like about 3 weeks for it to fully ferment, and then what's called racking your beer when you put it in the bottles, and then you cap it. It's a super fun experience. I encourage, because I know you, both you gentlemen, live close by. Do it together. Do it this Oktoberfest just started. Do it now. Just buy a six pack, buy a kit, make a six pack, and it will be such a rewarding experience.
Yep. I have done it before. Years
Oh, have
ago,
you really?
years ago I got for a Christmas present a homebrew kit.
That's exactly how it started. My wife bought me a kit as a Christmas present when I was at Cal, and fell in love with it ever since. And I haven't made beer since the fire, but it's been on the back of my mind. And shoot, we should do a plug for any beer making company right now,
about
because
little Evans.
Yeah, we have an upcoming episode with a brewer.
a veteran
Little
brewer,
Yeah, yeah, local.
awesome,
Yeah,
love it.
He's an old army buddy of mine. So, well, let's talk hot sauce.
yeah. Why Mach 1?
It's a sick name, man. Come on,
Oh,
that's a
I
cool
agree.
name. All right, honestly, not to get too far into the weeds here. Mach 1. All right, if you think about just our human ingenuity, when did the Wright brothers, Dan, you're probably going to know this answer. When did the Wright brothers discover flight? Was it 1913 or 1918?
It was the teens. Yeah.
Yeah,
What was it,
let's say
13? I think?
1913. Yeah, I think it's
It would have
1913.
been closer to turn of the century
They
because
didn't. They didn't
Yeah.
discover flight, but
Well, correct. They did not discover flight per se, but it was the
it was
first
close to
manned
turn of the
form.
century because they were already starting to make stuff during the teens.
Crazy, whimsical stuff. We've all seen the videos.
Yeah.
Crazy, just out there. But I love the crazy, whimsical stuff. But the Wright brothers discovered flight in 1913. They were able to fly for like 67 seconds,
Yeah.
right? A powered aircraft, right? By what, 1968, 69 landed on the moon?
Couple generations, right? So
That's it. That's it. In a couple, you could have been 10 years old when they discovered when you saw flight for the first time, and in your, I don't know, 70s or 80s, we're landing on the moon.
Mhm.
That's an
yeah.
insane, in just absolutely insane, uh, uh, progress.
scientific
Kind of,
progression.
yes, no different than the dot-com era of what's called like Occam's razor, or not Occam's razor, Moore's law, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Twice as fast, half the size kind of thing. So I love that entire spirit of ingenuity and pushing the boundaries. And I feel like aviation is one of the first ones to do it. I know that's not entirely true. We could say the same. Automobiles were probably the more, but then why stop at automobiles? Why not say machinery, right? So we're just going to keep stay on airplanes. So Mach 1, the Bell X-1, piloted by Chuck Yeager on October 13th, 1947, was the first plane to go achieve Mach 1 on a horizontal plane. And I thought, that's really cool. I think it's kind of a staple for American ingenuity and engineering. And I love the name Mach. you know. This is me getting into the weeds, but the "k" sound is easier to remember for humans, so that works. It also has like a double meaning where Mach 1 can mean, literally just the speed of sound, right? Which is 753 miles per hour. But we also use it sort of ubiquitously for something that goes really fast, right? So it's checking all these boxes. I just think it's a really cool name. And that's what we did. Um, we're all about ingenuity and pushing limits. And excuse me, some people may say, well, yours is probably really hot. And this is kind of like where it's a double-edged sword. The contrarian idea is I think a lot of people want to have a hot sauce that has flavor more than anything else, more than just
Yeah.
heat.
Yep,
And
I
I know
agree.
I sent you gentlemen two bottles, and one unfortunately did not survive the trip.
One did not survive the Mach 1 trip.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send you a replay. I know I said I was going to. I haven't yet. I've been super busy, but we have two other SKUs, stock keeping units. We have a Scotch Bonnet and ginger, and then the one that didn't survive the flight was, no pun intended. Right there, you go. Was a roasted garlic and habanero. Both of those are pretty popular. The hottest one is for sure hotter. It's like a 7 out of 10. But if you like mole or adobo, it's kind of akin to that. So we wanted to make a hot sauce that has like full flavor, but it doesn't have like a bunch of junk. It doesn't have any sugars. It has no gums, no oils, no stabilizers, no preservatives, no colors. Um, I just feel like if you come from a culinary world, you definitely kind of, maybe, I don't want to say look down on it, but you could say like, do we really need all this? Does this all this have to be there? And the answer is often no,
Yeah.
but people will put it in because it's cheap and it's easy.
When you were putting all this together, did your father consult on any of this?
No, he did not.
Okay.
I don't want to say it's a strained relationship, but
Okay.
it's not as good as it probably could have been.
So, with the three flavors that you have right now, are there plans in the works for more?
Great question. Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, I would say later this month, but realistically, it'll be the beginning of next month. We are releasing a hot honey, which is
Mm.
definitely us riding a wave. There's a lot more pull for a hot honey
Is this
today in
like
the
Nashville?
marketplace. Yeah, yeah, but it's better than that.
Great.
I
Well,
know I'm biased. This is a very subjective take, but our hot honey is really, really good because we're able to achieve what I feel is like the perfect viscosity where it doesn't need to be in a plastic squeeze bottle. I understand plastic is a necessity. Um, but if your food doesn't have to be in it, I don't think it should.
agreed.
Glass is easier to recycle. So again, better for the environment. And what we have created is a hot sauce that is able to pour out of a 5 ounce, what are called a woozy bottle. So it's able to pour out of our bottle. Very nice. It has a great flavor profile where you're going to get honey first and then you're going to get the heat second. That's because of the peppers that we chose to use and our cooking process.
Real quick before we move on, for the listener or the viewer, can you go ahead and throw out your social media website, all that stuff, so if they want to go ahead and get
And
themselves some Mach 1?
we'll link some of this stuff too. So
Yeah, you know what? We're pretty simple. Everything is just Mach 1 hot sauce. We're on Walmart.com. We have our own Shopify website called Mach 1 Hot Sauce. We have an Instagram account called Mach 1 Hot Sauce, as you gentlemen know. We have a Facebook, we have a YouTube, we have an X as of yesterday.
oh, very nice.
Uh, yeah, and then we should be on Amazon come October, September.
But in time for the
Awesome.
holidays. So
Yeah, in time for the holidays. But if you live here in California, we're in about 165 retail locations. So we put in a lot of work and effort. What I feel like is the most important is these brick and mortar stores.
Okay, well, before we wrap this up, let me ask you one more question about the business side of things. What would you say that you have utilized from your military experience in the business world?
Discipline. That's it. Honestly, I think anyone could do any job. Presumably, there's no physical or mental limitations. Let's say. Um, to quote Ray, um, it is uh, perseverance. You have in anything, and they teach this. Obviously, the Marine Corps is all about adapt, improvise, and overcome. But that really just comes down to the mindset that you have to have, the discipline to continuously show up and to perform to the best of your ability. You are not going to win all of them. You're probably not going to win 50%, but hopefully the 30% or the 20% that you do get, that's what's going to get you, over the other remaining portions, right? Um, the hardest part, though, will always be the mentality that you bring to the table. It's the what I feel like is the quintessence of success is doing the work that controlling the things that you can, putting in the work where you have a sense of like force behind and waiting for your opportunity or trying to create your opportunity. That I think is the most important part. The military teaches you a lot, but I think at the end of the day, for a lot of military members, you're going to be kind of stuck in this position of like, is this something I could continue to, is this goal attainable? Can I do the best of my ability to get there? Right. Um, Everything else is some form of muscle memory, you know? If it's the military, it's going to be Barney style, right? They're making everything as simple and effective and easy to transfer and easy to teach. Try and make it as indestructible as possible because there's going to be a lot of dummies,
challenge accepted.
So, yeah. So, at the end of the day, like, what has the military taught you that you could bring to the table? Like, man, I'm going to be here and there is no challenge too big for me that I can't find a way to accomplish, right? That I think is the most integral part: mentality, discipline, perseverance, showing up, doing it, putting in the work where you can.
I know that I said that was the last business question, but I'm going to ask you one more.
Do it.
Is there a Mach 1 brewing in the future? Even if it's just kind of percolating in the back of your mind right
Is it brewing?
I would I would personally love that if down the line we could do something like that. I would welcome any opportunity. Shoot, get me in contact with your brewer friend. We could do a Mach 1 hot sauce collab beer. Uh, there's an opportunity that exists. We could like dry hop some habaneros in there or something. Get creative.
He's a wild man. He might take you up on that.
It's totally possible. I've made beer. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be amazing, but it'd be different. Uh, I love that idea. I love again, like being, um, Steve Jobs said that, do, you want to feel like a kid again. You want to do something new. It helps keep you young. It's pushing the boundaries, never being afraid, rising to the occasion. So yeah, I'm not going to say no.
All right. My final question before we ask our official final question is: out of the entire collection, what crayon is your favorite flavor?
Blue.
Blue is the correct response, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, undoubtedly blue. Anybody who tells you otherwise, can't trust them.
now.
Um,
All
have
right.
you ever seen Have you ever seen Futurama?
Of
Oh, of
course.
course.
Oh, I love Futurama. Do you remember when Fry says this is the time when they go back? I believe it was this episode that actually won them an Emmy. Where Fry. All right, you could edit this part out. Do you remember the part where like Fry goes back in time and he basically like he's his own grandpa?
Yes.
They go to the military base and it's a great episode. I think it's like season two or season three. It's fantastic. But there's a moment where he's microwaving uh popcorn and then they're like meeting with this quasar. So half the screen is red and the other half is blue, and that's what allows them to go back in time. So but when the screen is going blue, he's like, what smells like blue? And it's like blue does have a good smell. Anyways, super long-winded anecdotal story.
All right. So from from joining the Marines because the Army recruiter was out to lunch,
He was.
and
It's a true story.
and from planning to go into the FBI or the CIA across your multiple deployments, and then driving a honeysucker while you're going to school. Would you do it all again? If you could go back, would you do it all again?
Yes, undoubtedly, yes. I would make investments in Bitcoin and like Tesla and Google and Facebook, though, with a lot of that deployment money instead. Yes.
I did everything wrong too with my money, so I hear you on that.
Yes. And if I were to do all that, who knows, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today. Uh, yeah, I would. You know what? I would to answer, and I don't want to take up any more of your gentleman's time. Yes, I would. I would take better care of my body. I would invest my money. I would take better care of my body. I would invest my money. And if I could have the confidence to say at that age, everything will be fine. It will work because when you're in it, it's like you don't know that you're in it, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're in it, you're like, it just sucks right now, and I hope it will get better. And I'm going to keep working on, for the future. And I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows right now, but I definitely would tell for the sake of my heart, probably I would tell myself like it's gonna be okay.
Perfect. Well, Cassidy, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
appreciate it.
coming on and sharing part of your story. And it's a wild ride, man. It's a wild ride.
Yeah. I know for a fact you gentlemen have your own stories and they're probably much better than mine, but you know,
Not better, just different.
it's, I think there's definitely a lot of people out there that have similar um, similar stories, like you said. Maybe not better, but different. It's are we just talking offline right now? I know it's recording, but yes.
I mean, it can be if you want it to be.
I really enjoyed that episode, brother. What do you think?
Yeah, man, that guy has had he's had some high highs and he's had some low lows that we did not
Yeah,
get into
right.
during the episode recording. But yeah, man, he's been through quite a bit.
Yeah, we kind of dipped our toe in it a little bit, but the opioid crisis, he struggled with that. We'll just leave it at that. We didn't get into a whole lot of details, but I think that is a huge iceberg within the veteran community that hopefully we're mostly through. I'm mixing my metaphors here. I think we're mostly through a lot of that problem because it got identified and nipped here in the last few years.
Yeah,
There's a lot of guys and gals who got hooked on Percocets, and let's just say that they lost control of their lives because of
yeah,
that.
and it spiraled them downwards. Yeah,
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 I know
absolutely.
I know a lot of guys that happened to. So,
Yeah,
but he came out on the other side. So, join the Marine Corps. I love that the Marines were the best option because the Army guys were literally out to lunch.
literally out to lunch.
Life can be like that sometimes, right?
But I mean, it worked. It worked for him. He
Yeah,
he loved it, or at least the first few years because
yeah,
he was going different places. He was doing different things that he never, he was having these adventures and experiences that he never expected to
yeah,
have in his life. And it was just, every few months it was doing something different, a new training, meeting new people, going to a new place. I mean, yeah, he
yeah.
loved all that stuff. It was obvious, and it was obviously good for him.
Right.
Um, given where he is now, even if maybe his service after one term, didn't necessarily. I don't want to say that it ended on a bad note, um,
I think
but
fizz is what we it ended with a fizz.
yeah. I mean, I guess because I mean he said that if the opportunity had been there for him to take a knee or for him to stay at that unit that he was at, then he very well might have stayed in.
Yeah,
Um, but that wasn't a possibility. He had a very young family, or he was he and his wife were just starting their family,
yeah.
and so he wanted to do better by them, which I understand. So yeah, yeah. We
Then he
didn't
gets
ask. We didn't
good.
ask, but you and I are very familiar with the way that human waste is removed in um,
Dispatched.
in combat environments. I don't know that he had
Or
to
not.
do it given his position and where he was, but to see him then transition from potentially doing that
Yeah.
to driving the honeysucker.
Oof.
I don't I don't know if I could have made that transition. I don't
Works for
I
everybody
don't think
poops.
so. It's true. It's true. But he's done well for himself.
And
He's done
hot
well for
sauce.
himself.
What that's kind of an interesting turn, but he's making a hash of it. So good for him.
No, I mean, veterans get into all sorts of businesses. There are a lot of veteran-owned uh, coffee companies, beers, um, there's
Knives.
knives,
Know a lot of knives.
firearms.
Yeah.
I have not heard of, and maybe there are, but I have not heard of a veteran-owned hot sauce company until now.
Yeah.
or until we got introduced to him.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
it's
I've
different.
known a couple. I've known a few that do a lot of philanthropic work with the veteran community, but they are not veteran owned themselves.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, yeah.
No. And I mean, service members have all sorts of interesting hobbies. I knew guys that made their own jerky, right? They were avid outdoorsmen. They would go out and bag a deer, and they would make their own venison jerky. Um, Guys that got into woodworking, guys that got into metalworking, um, all sorts of different.
We know a stained glass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
veterans get into all sorts of things, and it's just I think the hot sauce is unique. Uh,
yeah. Some clowns even
I
get.
had never thought of homemade hot sauce,
Yeah,
you being something to do. Yeah.
it sounds like it's far more lucrative than podcasting. We are but humble servants.
Yes.
Okay. Any parting shots on Mr. Nolan?
Nope. I don't think so.
So we got some stuff cooking up, everybody, with Cassidy in the future. We'll see. We'll see where it goes, but we've got some ideas. So okay,
Okay. All right. Free fire time. You ready?
it's that time. Yes, indeed.
Do you think that I don't want to call them supernatural, but mythical? No, that's not even the right word. Creatures like the Loch Ness Monster or the abominable snowman.
Cryptids.
How much validity do you put into their existence?
I don't have a simple answer to this, so I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. I listened to another podcast. It's called The Haunted Cosmos. It's two gentlemen who are one of them's a Christian pastor. I believe the second one might also be, but it is a Christian biblical worldview that tackles stuff from the X Files universe. So it could be anything from cryptids like the Loch Ness Monster and Yeti and Bigfoot to some of the more kind of X Files type stuff like the black eyed children and shapeshifters and all this. What do they call them? The skinwalkers. There we go.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, I think the short answer is no. I don't think that Bigfoot is real. I do think that again, as a believer, I do think that there are weird, strange phenomena that go on in this world that we don't really have from a materialist perspective, doesn't really answer the mail on all the things that people are seeing and experiencing. So it's kind of that uncanny realm in between.
Yeah.
And, humanity has been kind of trying to figure, figure this out since the beginning. Even not even necessarily from a Judeo-Christian perspective. I mean, that's where a lot of the mythology comes from, is people trying to make sense of the natural or supernatural world in a way that they can understand through stories and legends and myths and things like that. So, no, I don't think Bigfoot is real, but yes, I do think that there are supernatural powers that are beyond our level of understanding that could be manipulating the world in ways that we don't really understand. Does
What
that kind of,
about Yeah?
yeah?
No, that makes sense. What about aliens? Not necessarily little green men, but intelligent life elsewhere in the cosmos.
No, I don't believe in aliens in the sense that you're talking about. So again, it comes back to the what's the meme with the guy with the crazy hair, and I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. That's kind of me, except demons.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not saying it's demons, but it's definitely demons. So.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean I hope that answered your question in a fulsome way, because
I mean, it's just
yeah,
a
the
question.
little black bug-eyed little gray men. No, I don't believe in that. No.
Okay.
How about you, my friend?
As far as the cryptids like Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster, I think that it is entirely possible. However, not necessarily probable. Um, there are places of this planet that are untouched by human eyes since its inception,
Yeah.
since creation, and I think it would be foolish to dismiss everything completely. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, the likelihood of there being a race of 9 foot tall, super hairy people that are on multiple continents and have avoided detection, probably not impossible,
Why is
but
it always in a
also,
trailer park?
yeah, it's not necessarily probable. I think the likelihood of there being something that lives in Loch Ness is probably higher than the probability of Bigfoot,
Yeah.
just because Loch Ness is so deep. You know, and I mean the oceans are far deeper than anything that we have right now can possibly hope to reach the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, so that it is entirely possible that there are, and it's entirely likely that there are things down there that are probably far more terrifying than anything that our human brains can comprehend.
So
Um,
sounds to me like what you're saying is there are megalodon in the Marianas Trench, and it's only but a matter of time.
I mean, with the size of some of these like squids and octopus or whatever that keep washing up in like Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, I mean, like every 10 years, something washes up that is just, I mean, and it's dead, it's not alive, but they just seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Gojira.
I mean, it's it's interesting, terrifying, it really
Yeah.
makes you scared of the ocean. But
The truth
now,
is out there.
as far as the little green men with the big, big black eyes and the flying saucers and stuff, no, no, I don't think things like that are out there necessarily. However, intelligent life out there in the universe somewhere, I think it is. I think it is ridiculously arrogant of us as a human species that believes in a creator to think that we are the only ones out there that he created. I think that is wildly arrogant of us. So I think it's entirely possible. I
Fair
don't know
enough.
why there's been like a huge resurgence in UFO craziness over the last
They're UAPs now.
uh, whatever
Yes.
for the last decade or so. But
Right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and land the spaceship here. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us this evening. Please check out our social medias. We're on all of them except TikTok. Please like, share, and subscribe to the program with any of your friends, family. Y'all are our marketing team.
yeah, yeah,
Take us out, Dan.
yeah. Leave a review and go check out Mach One hot sauce.
Yeah,
And if you like it, I don't know, maybe put in the good word for Mach One brew. Hmm?
that's right.
And of course, remember, your service matters.
That was great. I legitimately feel better.
Thanks. That
Awesome.
means a lot.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, I am going to leave all of that in.
Oh, wow. Okay.